Green Day's Billie Joe Armstrong has threatened to renounce U.S. citizenship. We're going to break down all the details and the logistics. So the musician Billie Joe Armstrong was in the UK doing a concert and was apparently pretty upset about the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade in the United States. And so he got up on stage and said, hey, I'm so angry, I'm going to renounce my U.S. citizenship and I'm going to come and live here with you. So we're going to break this down from the immigration perspective, as well as what it's like to expatriate from the United States. If it's your first time here, my name is Andrew Henderson. I'm not only a former U.S. citizen, which is germane to this conversation, but also the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally reduce their taxes, diversify and protect their assets, and get multiple citizenships to make sure they're always in control of their own life. We also host the biggest and best offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live. And who knows, if he does actually renounce, maybe Billie Joe Armstrong will perform, not this year, but in future years. And so obviously it's not lost. I mean, that celebrities often threaten to leave the United States. If you're not from the U.S., and does this happen where you live, leave a comment below. People certainly have left France for Belgium, so it does happen in Europe. People always threaten to move to Canada, often don't follow through. I said 7 years ago, why don't people move to Mexico? It's much easier to move to than Canada. The food's better. And lo and behold, now all the Americans are moving to Mexico. What I'll say about this, first of all, as, again, someone who's been through the expatriation process, we're in that world, and so I've talked about it publicly. We help people discuss whether that's a good thing for them. And so I don't put my personal experience out there because I think anybody is like going to change anything about it. And if you're going to give up your citizenship to like send a message, that's the wrong reason to do it. Whether it was the Vietnam War decades ago or whether it's this now, do it for yourself. Some of the fans I saw on YouTube were saying like, it's a pretty selfish thing to do. Why aren't you solving the problem? It's like, well, your citizenship is your personal business and you should have the citizenship that you feel comfortable with. And if you feel better not being an American and that aligns with your values, then by all means do it. But I don't sit around imagining that there's somebody in the U.S. government like, we lost that Henderson. It's a real loss. Or that they're going to sit around like Billie Joe Armstrong. Yes, you're going to have the public issue of all the patriots who can't accept that in a country that was built on freedom of choice, you get the choice to make a choice. Like they're going to say, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So you're in the public perception issue, which obviously doesn't concern me personally, but may concern you if you're Billie Joe Armstrong. Even some of the more left-leaning people would say you should have stayed and fought for the cause. Why did you cut and run? So it's not going to help in the public perception, and you're not going to send a message. Absolutely nobody cares. Now, let's talk about the logistics of, can Billie Joe Armstrong move to the UK? And the answer is probably, but it's not nearly as easy as people think. I often watch these TV shows over the years on U.S. television. And I'm amazed by just like, hey, I'm moving to France. How are you moving to France? I don't know. They don't talk about it. People just think you can move to France, right? You're in the United States and you see how difficult it is for people to come to your country, right? Or maybe you don't because everyone thinks it's super easy, but it's actually not easy at all in the scope of things. It's also not easy to move to a lot of other developed countries. The UK is one of the hardest countries to go to. Now, if you are Billie Joe Armstrong, you could probably get a UK residence permit through their global talent visa. A lot of countries have that. The US has the O1, which is how a number of performers who are not American live in the US because he's a notable talent in the arts and culture industry, so he could probably do that. But there aren't really that many routes for just simply wealthy people to move to the UK. And so unless he somehow has a British parent, or an Irish parent or a grandparent, because Ireland and the UK have a special arrangement, then he's going to need to get a residence permit to live there, and I guess the global talent is probably one way that you can do it. Beyond that, if you want to renounce your citizenship, you really want to have another citizenship. If you are someone who's performing, apparently on an international basis, being stateless is probably going to be pretty difficult. I mean, you can perhaps be stateless, not a very good lifestyle decision for most people. But if you're traveling around the world with some stateless person's travel document, I think you're going to have some troubles with that. Now, I did find out that Armstrong was given honorary citizenship of Viggiano, the Italian commune from where his great-great-grandparents hailed, by Viggiano's mayor, Amedeo Secala. that's worth about zero, right? So people often message me like, hey, I'm friends with the guys who run the Liberland project, and I'm excited about what they're doing in Liberland. You're not going to renounce on a Liberland passport. You're not going to renounce on a Vigiano passport. I know people from Moldova who are from a part of Moldova that's like Gagauzia, and Gagauzia has its own. That's not helping you. You need a real country if you want to renounce, a real country that is recognized by pretty much all the other countries. And so apparently, Billie Joe Armstrong has some kind of honorary dual citizenship. I don't even know how a commune can issue a citizenship. I think it's just something they put together. So he will need a second citizenship to renounce. I am going on the record. We will gladly help. I will absorb the costs of a reasonably priced second citizenship. Billy, help at nomadcapitalist.com. Help at nomadcapitalist.com. That's where you contact us, and we will be happy to help you. Now, if he has a great-great-grandparent from Italy, it's possible, depending on how far back that was and what Italy was doing at that point, that he could claim Italian citizenship by descent, because they're one of the, I think, 9 countries in Europe where you can go back even further than your third generation, so even further than great-grandparents under certain conditions. So if he could document that, and there was an unbroken chain of Italian ancestry where nobody naturalized before the next person was born, he could theoretically qualify for Italian citizenship, and then, by virtue of being an Italian citizen, would have access to live anywhere in the EU, and so he could, go and live. I mean, pretty much I think you've got 2 countries in the EU that don't allow abortion, Malta and Poland is my understanding. And so the rest of them, the laws seem pretty similar. If that's what's driving him in his decisions, because we all get to define what freedom is to us, right? That's how it works. Whether you agree with that or I agree with that or not, he would be able to, as an Italian citizen, go and live in France, go and live in Spain, go and live in, Sweden or Estonia or, Ireland. If he were to live in Ireland and eventually became an Irish citizen, then he'd have the ability to live in the UK. I'm not so sure that this statement, I would imagine just, I'm in the UK, so therefore I'm going to live here. I would imagine if he was in Estonia at the time, he would say, I'm going to come and live here. Even though I guess the UK does have some of the most open abortion laws in Europe. You're not going to be a stateless person, so you need a citizenship to renounce first. If he doesn't already have that citizenship, and again, with Vigiano not counting, from what I can research, he probably doesn't. Now, I don't talk about all my citizenships. He may have some citizenship that we're not aware of, but unless he has some other country citizenship, that's not going to be good enough. You don't want to become stateless. And certain embassies may not even really make it very easy for you to renounce and become stateless. Again, UK citizenship versus living in the UK. Okay. He says, I want to move here. And then people say, oh, you're going to become a UK citizen. This is something even really intelligent people don't get this. When I go to my bank, for example, they're like, oh, I have a bank, very high level bank. And they're like, oh, you're not a US citizen anymore. You live in Malaysia. Does that mean you're a Malaysian citizen? You don't just move to a country and when you land, here's your passport. I mean, it takes decades for people who do get Malaysian citizenship, unless they're like a famous footballer, to get it. And most people will never be able to work towards citizenship. Malaysia is the place that you live. It's not a place that you're a citizen. So you can get any other citizenship that you want and then live in Malaysia with that because they don't discriminate. The same thing is probably true in the UK. Now, the UK probably discriminates more on nationalities. If you're a Nigerian, you're going to get put through more checks than an American. In the UK, I would generally estimate. But they don't discriminate based on you're coming in. They're just going to make sure they're just going to check you. So Billie Joe Armstrong could go to the Caribbean, for example, and get citizenship by investment. He could do that in a matter of months. He could get a citizenship in St. Lucia or Antigua or St. Kitts and Nevis. Those are English-speaking countries, and so generally speaking, you can bypass any language test in the UK in a way that if you were to claim your Italian citizenship, you'd have to go and take a language test generally because the UK is no longer the EU and Italy is not an English-speaking country, and for a lot of the visas, they want you to speak English. And so the Caribbean citizenship would be a way for him to, within a matter of months, have a second citizenship. He could then renounce his citizenship. Now, the challenge with that is you're not going to be able to go to the United States unless you get some kind of other visa. Could he then go back to the United States and say, hey, I want an O1 talent visa to come and perform? Yeah, maybe. Are they going to approve that? Quite possibly, but maybe not, right? I mean, what are the political ramifications of denying a former American musician who wants to come back and perform and theoretically pay some taxes for that, a visa? So these are the kinds of conversations that come up. But relevant to living in the UK, he can probably get that. But he's not going to be a UK citizen unless he lives there for a substantial part of time for, the next half a dozen years. And so what you want, as we always tell you, is one citizenship that gives you a passport you can travel on. And so, yeah, no doubt, if you are a well-known performer, perhaps if you're a well-known business person, if you're a well-known athlete, yeah, perhaps you can get a number of these kind of talent visas to get you into places where you need to go to perform. But obviously, a passport like a Caribbean passport is not going to be as good as an American passport. It's not going to be as good as the UK passport that it would take you years to work towards. If you can get his Italian passport, yeah, that's probably pretty similar to the U.S. And I would imagine you wouldn't have too many problems, traveling around the world doing touring as an Italian citizen. But always understand that residence and citizenship are not the same. The place where you live should be the place where you live. And if you don't like the idea of being an American citizen because you don't identify with the values of the country, and you could change any country. If you don't like being an Iraqi citizen because you don't identify with the values of that country, if you really feel that getting rid of that passport will make you feel better, I'm all for that. And I understand where you're coming from. But for a lot of people, the idea is, I just want to live in a place where it represents my values, just as many Iraqis move to the West and say, hey, what do I care if I have an Iraqi citizenship? It doesn't really bother me. I'm here. This is where I feel safe. This is where I feel like this is my place. You can do the same going the other direction. Hey, you can be an American who just lives in Europe, right? You have to give up the citizenship. Now, once you find out the complications of doing global taxes, because Americans are always, filing and paying taxes no matter where they live in the world, then, you might be more frustrated with the United States and you might go on stage and complain about that. But the point is, residence and citizenship, not the same. Citizenship for having a passport, being able to travel, being able to function in the world. Residence for a place that you want to live. Sometimes those overlap. They don't necessarily have to. And in the case of Europe, you're not just going to go to Europe and be handed a passport on arrival. So that's what Billie Joe Armstrong should do. Perhaps worry less about the citizenship, more about where he's living, and we're happy to help.